This one also comes from Reddit, and I want to keep it close to the original because the pattern in it is painfully common. A 30-year-old husband wrote that he and his wife had been in a trial separation for almost 4 months. The separation had been initiated by her. He said it came as a surprise but not a total shock. Things were clearly not rock solid before that. Still, like a lot of men in these situations, he was holding on to the idea that maybe separation meant space, not finality. So he kept trying to get clarity. Was she leaning out the door, or was there still a path back? The problem was he could not get a straight answer in conversation, but if he was honest, her actions were answering him the whole time. That is the heart of this story. Because a lot of men do not get trapped by obvious lies, they get trapped by ambiguity, by delayed answers, by mixed signals, by just enough uncertainty to keep hope on life support. He said his attempts to reconnect in a low-pressure way kept getting rejected. Then she moved out. He put the ball in her court, and after that communication dropped even more. That alone should have told him something. But hope is expensive, and men pay for it longer than they should. Then another detail came in. She booked a solo holiday with a one-way ticket. Now even that, standing alone, might not have been enough to end things. Strange, yes. Concerning, yes. But maybe still explainable if the relationship had been moving toward repair. Except it was not. And then came the detail that finally broke the fog. He found out she had just gotten a contraceptive implant 1 week before leaving for the trip. And as he pointed out, he had gotten a vasectomy 5 years earlier. She said it was for headaches tied to her period. Maybe that was true. He even admitted that it could be true. But the timing, the lack of communication, the distance, the trip, all of it together made the explanation feel hollow. He used one line from the post that really captured where his head was at. "You can spit in my face, but don't try to tell me it's raining." And I think that line lands because this was no longer just about the implant. It was about trust. It was about a man looking at a series of separate details and realizing that whether or not he could prove anything, the relationship no longer felt honest. And that matters. A lot of men waste years trying to build a legal case in their own relationship. They think if they cannot prove the worst thing, then they have to keep doubting their own instincts. But loss of trust does not always arrive with courtroom evidence. Sometimes it arrives as a pattern your nervous system has already started believing before your pride can catch up. At that point, he started thinking in ultimatum terms. He planned to tell her that if she wanted to reconnect, she needed to cancel the trip and agree to work on the marriage. If she went on the trip now, after all of this, then that would be the end of their almost decade-long marriage. He even asked the subreddit if that sounded reasonable, knowing ultimatums usually sound controlling. And that part is worth pausing on. Because what he was really trying to do was not dominate her, he was trying to force clarity. He was trying to say, if this marriage still matters, then show me now. A lot of men do this near the end, not because they are strong, but because they are exhausted. The ultimatum becomes one final attempt to drag certainty out of a situation that has already been leaking truth for months. Then came the update. And the update is why I think this story is so useful. He said he decided against the ultimatum. Instead of trying to bargain with the situation one last time, he pulled the plug himself. He sat down with her and told her he was emotionally exhausted. He said he had been clinging to the hope of reconnecting without seeing any actual indication that reconnection was happening. He said he thought they should move to a permanent separation. Then he asked her directly if that was accurate, if she really was not interested in reconnecting. And she confirmed it. She said nothing had really changed for her and that she thought they were just too different. That was the moment the whole story snapped into place. Because he realized something important. He wrote that he was upset she had strung him along for so long without actually telling him. But then he added the line that really should stay with every man who hears this story. She told me clearly, just not with words. That is the lesson. That is the whole lesson. She told him when she rejected every attempt to reconnect. She told him when communication kept dropping. She told him when she moved out. She told him when she booked the trip. She told him when she let ambiguity do the work of honesty. And he did what many men do. He kept waiting for a sentence that would feel definitive enough to let him stop hoping. But sometimes no sentence comes. Sometimes behavior is the sentence. And if a man does not learn how to read it, he can lose years begging for verbal clarity from someone who is already gone in practice. Now what I respected in his update was what he did next. He did not go down every rabbit hole. He did not interrogate her about whether there was another man. He did not obsess over whether the implant was a smoking gun. He said he had already made up his mind, and chasing that proof would not be good for anyone. That is a mature decision. Not because the truth would not matter, but because once the relationship is functionally over, there is a point where more evidence stops bringing clarity and just starts feeding pain. He asked about practical things instead. The one-way ticket, how long she planned to be away, when they would tell the kids, what co-parenting would look like. He said 50-50 custody would be non-negotiable because the kids needed both of them. He planned to talk to a lawyer. He hoped they could divide assets and debt fairly without using them as weapons. He was hurt, anxious, and grieving, but he had finally stepped out of the fantasy stage and into the reality stage. And that matters too, because for a lot of men, the relationship does not really end when the other person checks out. It ends when he finally stops arguing with the evidence. This story is not really about a trip. It is not really about a contraceptive implant. And it is not even mainly about infidelity, whether there was any or not. It is about what happens when a man keeps asking for reassurance while the pattern keeps moving in the opposite direction. That contradiction can trap a person for a long time. Because words are easy to delay. Words can stay vague. Words can be softened. Words can be postponed until after the trip, after the holidays, after the stress, after the kids are asleep, after one more conversation. But actions are harder to hide. Actions have direction. And direction is what he finally had to face. The direction was away. That does not mean she was evil. That does not mean every confusing person is malicious. Sometimes people simply do not have the courage to say the honest thing when they first know it. Sometimes they keep the other person in emotional limbo because it is easier than fully owning their exit. But whatever the reason is, the damage to the other person is real. And men need to stop pretending that delayed honesty is somehow kinder than the truth. It is not. It just makes the grieving process longer and messier. Now here is my closing commentary. I think the biggest mistake men make in situations like this is treating words like the only form of truth. They think until she says it directly, I have to keep fighting. Until she confesses it, I have to keep waiting. Until I catch something undeniable, I have to keep giving the benefit of the doubt. But life does not work that way. A lot of the time, the truth arrives in patterns first. In cancelled reconnection. In emotional distance. In logistics that no longer include you. In decisions made without transparency. In the feeling that you are the only one still trying to preserve something that has already been mentally abandoned. And the longer a man ignores that pattern, the more he starts bargaining with disrespect. He starts negotiating with what should have already been enough information. This husband finally stopped doing that. He stopped demanding a courtroom confession and accepted the verdict that behavior had already delivered. That is painful, but it is cleaner. And it is often the beginning of real recovery. So if you are ever in a relationship where the actions keep moving further away, while the words stay vague enough to keep you attached, pay attention. Do not just ask what they are saying. Ask what direction their behavior is moving in. Because the direction is often the answer. And when a man learns to read that in time, he saves himself from spending years waiting for words that were never going to come.